Seems safe, right? You can see one over there now. Good morning. So today I'm hiking down the Mimbres, or up the Mimbres to Reed's Peak. I'm parked here. To get here you go up what everybody calls Wall Lake Road. It's actually North Star Mesa Road. You go up past the turnoff to go to Cooney. There's a campground and stuff down there. And you just keep coming. There's a sign. And you come up here. So there's a set of shipping pins here. And this is the trailhead. Problem is, where's my horse? Guess I'm walking. I'm going to be taking trail number 77 to Reed's Peak, so I have 12.25 miles to go. So this trail is just going to drop down into the river and then go up to the Mimbres. You can also get to it this way, but it's not passable right now. So it looks like I'm headed down. Down here in the bottom is Cooney. So there's a road that drops down. There's a campground and there's a couple houses and stuff down there. There's a little bit of private property. And this trail used to just go up the bottom, and they're having problems with easements and stuff, and so that's why they got this trail that drops off the top, just goes around the private and then drops into the river and then ties into the old trail. So everybody calls it Cooney Canyon. It's right over there. And it was named after a Civil War veteran. So there was a wilderness ranger. His name was Woodrow, I think. Something, Woodrow. And so he named it after this veteran who would come in and he would prospect in this area. So there you go with Cooney. It's a good little campground. Fun little place to take families and stuff like that. And there's a really nice cabin down there. They call it a cabin. It's just like a big house. Right there by that pile of rocks. I just jumped a mountain lion. It ran up on that hill over there. I have a lion tag. I wonder if I should try calling it in. That was pretty crazy. So I spent a lot of time in the woods. And that's only the second time I ran into one like that. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I've been seeing lion tracks up and down here as I've been hiking, but I didn't expect to bump into one at 15 yards. That lion ran up this hill right here. I think it didn't really cross my mind till I was trying to call it back, but I think most people would kind of freak out. They're by themselves, just hiking down a trail, and they jump a mountain lion. And then there's me, who pulls out a predator call out of my backpack, tries to get it to come back. I figure I wouldn't. I scared it pretty good, but you gotta at least try, or you'll be regretting it. You might be wondering why I'm walking instead of riding a horse. And the answer is, the horse isn't the job for this. A couple years ago, I was trying to make it up to Reed's Peak, horseback. And I tried going up, I was with my dad. We tried going up around Aspen Mountain over the top, which is usually the better way to go. And we fought all day with all the cat claw and the downed trees and the burned up fences and all that stuff getting tangled up. And so we decided we turned around, and then we came up here. We're going to go up the bottom of the Mimbres, go to Reed's Peak, and we made it to about where I'm at now, and the trail pretty much disappeared. And we could have made it further, but we knew once we got up here it was just going to be impassable on horseback. So we camped here, just right back here, and gave up. And it was the only time I've ever not made it to a destination that I was planning on. So it's been bugging me ever since. So I decided to walk and see if I could make it on foot. And so we'll see. So up to this point, backcountry horsemen, they cleared it. And so the trail's pretty good to this point, but this is as far as they got. That's why I'm walking instead of riding a horse. There's Monument Canyon. Looks like a monument. I've been going backwards on a bear track for quite a while. Mimbres here runs down here, down through the Mimbres Valley, down towards Deming, and it's a weird river because it doesn't really run into anything else. By the time it gets to Deming, it's usually dry, and if it does get there whenever it's flooding up here, it pretty much just soaks into the ground into an aquifer. So it doesn't go anywhere. It never ends up in the ocean. So that's kind of weird. So in this area in the Mimbres Valley, one point they estimated that there were 30,000 Membrano Indians that live there, which is a lot. Because right now I think in the whole valley there's like 1,000 or 1,200 or something like that. So it was way more populated back in the day than it is now. I missed the trail. I don't care how good a horse or mule you have, or how tough you think you are, you're not making it up here without doing a lot of trail work if you're gonna bring a horse in here. Makes you want to jump in. I made it up, all the way up to Mimbres. Now we're just going off the spur off the Mimbres. I have to go up this way. Reed's Peak is on the other side of that mountain. So I still got a ways to go. This is the part I've been dreading though, because it's just going to be uphill, dry, no trail, cutting brush for at least a couple miles. So it's going to take me a while. I'm running out of water, so I'm going to fill up and just start hiking, I guess. I guess that's what you're supposed to do. One foot in front of the other. Well, you just pretty much hit one little draw and you take a finger and you take another finger. So now I'm headed up this finger, closer, but it's pretty rough. You can see this is what I'm fighting with. Just barreling through. If you've never had the privilege of dealing with cat claw, it's all over the place, but I don't even know if you can see it. That looks like little cat claws. They're sharp, and they get you. All right, keep on moving. While I'm huffing and puffing trying to make it up this hill, do me a favor and reach over and grab that bucket of cheese balls you have on the couch next to you and eat one for me. Thank you. Here's the only actual trail that I've seen in a while. This is it. This is on the map. Actual trail. I made it to the top. Road 150, 12.5 miles. Road 152, 9.5. And Reed's Peak, 3/4. So this is the Crest Trail. It goes along the crest of the Black Range, right through the Aldo Leopold wilderness. And it starts at Emery Pass. Well, it probably starts further than that, but it kind of just follows the top all the way around. So I'm hoping that this trail is in better shape, or there is a trail, because it's part of the Continental Divide bypass area or something. So they usually try to keep those in decent shape. But from what it looks like from here, it doesn't look that great. We'll find out. Well, there's tread, but it's still not really much of a trail. Little overgrown, but it's better than what I just came up. Signboard saddle, that's where I tried to go up last time. Looks pretty much just like this right here the whole way, and it's a long ways. Over here we have Diamond Peak, 8 3/4 miles. 152 is 10 3/4 miles. 150, Forest Road 150. That's where I came in at. It's 12 3/4 miles. Reed's Peak, 1/4 mile that way. So it seems like it'd be easier to just go down the Crest Trail if you're trying to make it here. But if it's at all like it's been this last 3/4 of a mile, you probably don't want to do it. It's just cat claw. If you do, wear a long sleeve shirt, maybe Kevlar, safety glasses, and probably a helmet, because that cat claw is bad. I'm at Reed's Peak. As far as I can see, it's been burned. And the first one in recent years was in 2013, and that was a silver fire. And it pretty much wiped all of this stuff out. So everything that I hiked through today, all of that stuff was burned in the silver fire. Everybody said that the silver fire could have been prevented because it started over on Sawyer's Peak and it was small, and everybody was telling them, hey, you need to put that out, you need to put it out, and they didn't. They said they were just going to let it burn because it needed to be burned. A couple days later, the wind picked up, huge fire, burned all this stuff, completely trashed it. Then, so that was 2013, I think 2013. Last year, we had the black fire and it came through here, and I was hoping that it cleaned some stuff up, which it did, but it's not great. Still hasn't recovered. But they had to they had to wrap this cabin in aluminum foil pretty much to keep it from burning. So this is Reed's Peak cabin. That's the lookout tower. So we're going to kind of check them out a little bit. Reed's Peak was established, or they built this place in 1929. And so they built a lookout tower and a cabin. This cabin was, we replaced the original one in 1959. So it's been here since 59. It's on the National Historic Register. And as you can see, I think only mice have been living in it. So this is the cabin. Pretty interesting. I'll kind of walk you around. Bears have been in here. Seems safe, right? It's down and it's windy. Makes you pucker up a little bit. This is inside the tower. Seems safe to climb up in something that's been here since 1929, right? So it's 48 feet off the ground, and it feels taller than that. And this is an aero motor version, so it's a 7 by 7 foot square in here, and that's it. And so the whole purpose of this was to look for fires. And I don't know if you can see it, but you can see one over there now. I got here just as the wind picked up, but the way that it would work, so you have this table here, and it'd have a big map on it, and it's called an Aldo map. And it would spin, and it was oriented correctly, and so the guys would come up, whoever was working here would come up, and they would look for fires. Like I said, there's one over there, that might be the one, that's got to be the Aldos one that's going right now. And so you'd have this big thing and you would turn it and orient it, and then you would line it up and you would get an azimuth on it. So you get your bearings, and they would either have, depending on what era it was. So in the really early days, they would use telegraph, and then they went to telephone, so they ran telephone lines to all of these different lookout towers. And then they went to radios, and now they just use GPS and stuff like that. And so they would line it up, they'd get their azimuth, and so let's say like Hillsborough Peak's over this way. So let's say there was a fire in between these two, they would line them up, and they could figure out exactly where they were on the map just by themselves. But it worked if they triangulated it, and so they would get two bearings and they would know exactly where it was. And then the old saying was it took 2 men and a boy to put out a fire. So a lot of times, especially in the super early days, they would get a guy, they would just leave from here and they would go put out the fire, and then they would come back, and then they would just sit up here every day waiting for more fires. So it's kind of interesting. So over this way, that's the Rio Grande Valley over there. So you can see all of that. That must be the Animus. Or maybe that's Hillsborough, maybe that's the Animus. I'm not really sure. Everything looks different from up here. But you can see that silver fire, how big it was. All of that burned. It used to look nothing like this. I was trying to remember the last time I came here, and I knew it was a long time ago, and I was guessing it was 2004. And while I was talking, I kind of got distracted because it says probably, well, it's probably frowned upon, but people always put their names in these to show when they were there. And I don't remember doing this, but you can see right here, my brother Justin, May of '98, Ty Lee, July of '03, and then Billy Lee, he wrote it in pencil, so that's my dad, my brother, and then me, all different times. We had all come up here, but there's a bunch of names. You can just kind of see, you know, when people were here. So it's kind of interesting. Forest Service doesn't really like you because it's kind of like you're feeding, but it's more of like a time vault, really. Hopefully you can see or hear me, or see. You can see the fire over here. But this is pretty much it. I think this is a little cache over here. We'll go check it out. Mostly feed. I saw a mouse running. Oh, look, there's a mouse right there. Yeah, they got a problem. MREs. It's interesting how it's grounded all the way around. There's a cistern right here, but it looks like it disconnected, so let's see if there's any water in it. Not much. It'd probably help if their pipe was connected. Something else that always intrigues me about these places, these cabins or these towers, they pack those in on mules. So in 1929, they barely had airplanes that were somewhat reliable. So they didn't have helicopters or anything. So they just, I don't know, it's pretty crazy to me. Especially all this glass and, yeah, all these panels. It's pretty interesting. I dropped back off the hill, back to the main trail, and it's still early in the day, about 3:30. So instead of heading back, I think I'm gonna go, while I'm in the area, I'm gonna see how good the trail is this way. See how the conditions are while I'm here. Mazel. I don't know if you can see the big fire behind me. And I don't know if you could hear me earlier, but I said that the philosophy for fighting fires used to be it would take two men and a boy to put a fire out. So as soon as it would start, they would jump on it and put it out. Now the joke is they're not even going to touch it unless it costs $1 million, which with inflation that's probably like $2 million. So that fire over there, they're fighting it, it's going to be multiple millions of dollars. And I'm not a fire expert by any means. I know that this ruined it. It used to not look like this here. So I know that they probably should have let more burn back in the day, and they probably shouldn't let them get as big as they do today. So just a little something to think about. Like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but there's got to be some kind of system. So Reed's Peak is just right up there. It's windy. Come down. This is Squeaky Springs, and this used to not be all silted in, Used to be a pretty good little box. I was gonna get some water from here, but I don't know if I should drink that. Sure it's good, right? I don't know. I'm afraid to disturb it. It used to be, it wasn't all silted in and it was a big box and you could just get water out of it. It's been a while though, and there's a couple fires come through. Squeaky Springs! I dug it out a little bit so that way if the next person that comes might be able to just dip their water bottle in it. Maybe we'll check it on the way out and see if there's any improvement. But yeah, it's a big concrete box. It's just all full of sand and dirt. Headed out. All these elk tracks. I can't believe we haven't seen a bear. I've been following different sets of bear tracks pretty much all day. So right here at Squeaky Springs, this is where everybody, or a lot of people, thinks Reed's Meadow is because it's by Reed's Peak. This is just Squeaky Springs. Reed's Meadow is about 3 miles down, and so I'm gonna try, if the trail lets me, I'm gonna try to make it there tonight. So we'll go check that out. Diamond Peak, 8.5 miles. I'm not making it that far. Elk wallow down here in the bottom. And on a map, I've seen it on multiple different maps, but it's called the Whitmore Cabin Ruins. And they're just right around the corner here. I know nothing about it. If you know anything about the Whitmore Cabin, let me know. Obviously, I'm kind of into that stuff. I do want to say thank you to whoever cleared this trail. It's great. If it was like this, I would have brought horses. They have a corridor. You can see it's been a couple years. It's overgrowing, but you can still make it through. It's been logged. It's been like this the whole way since Reed's Peak. I can just imagine a pack of hounds opening down there. Looks like pretty good lion country to me. Oh, there's a bear. Right in Reed's Meadow. Right where I'm gonna camp, I finally saw one. Most of you watching probably don't know this, but all of my kids are named after places in the Gila. And so my oldest DIY human is named Reed, after Reed's Peak. So he's not named after the guy, he's named so my wife looks at the map, finds a name that she likes, and then I tell her, yeah, that'd probably be good, or no. So Reed's Peak, I didn't even know who the guy was. So, but I liked Reed's Peak. After doing some research, mostly thanks to my mom, we found out a little bit of information about Mr. Reed, and a little bit about this area. So where I'm at now, this is called Reed's Meadow. I've been here about, I don't know, 30-45 minutes. This is the only place that I can find that looks like the pictures that we have, and where maybe a foundation was. So before service, they used to just burn old cabins down, and so these ones got burned down who knows when, and kind of just demolished. So it looks like there's something here where there's deadhead at, and then there's more over here. There's little information about Mr. Reed. So there was this old timer, we call him an old timer. His name was Jake Osborne. And Jake Osborne's kind of a local legend in himself. He rode in the Mimbres Valley, I think in the 30s is what he said. and he just did a lot of ranch work and stuff. In his later years, he built spurs and bits and things like that. He owned the Mimbres store, and he died on his 90th birthday, and I was in high school at the time. So I kind of wish I could go back and ask him more questions, but he's one of those guys who did more than most people will ever do in their life. So, but I found some pictures, or my mom found some pictures of Jake Osborne up here at Mr. Reed's cabins, and he had 4 of them and a set of corrals. And so looking at the pictures, it looks like they might have been right here, and then the corrals maybe right down here. But the pictures were taken in the 40s, and so it's changed a little bit. And then, so these cabins, they were lined with newspapers for insulation, and they were around Teddy Roosevelt's era. So I guess the newspapers had Teddy Roosevelt stuff on them. So digging a little bit deeper, somebody said that they found a tree that had A. Reed carved into it. So everybody else just called him Mr. Reed. And she actually went and looked up his homestead agreement or homestead application, and his name was Aldolphus Reed. So A. Reed kind of makes sense. Aldolfo. And so I'm guessing he went by Al. I would go by Al if my name was Aldolfo. She did a little bit more research, and she found a guy that was a Civil War veteran stationed at Fort Baird, whose name was Charles Aldolphus Reed, and so that also might be him. So there's your little bit of a background about him. I know a couple stories, I guess, legends about him. So Mr. Reed, Aldolphus Reed, part of the Homestead Act is you have to make progress or do something with the land. And so what he did was he grew potatoes, which there is not a lot of people that grow potatoes up here. And what he would do is he would take them to Hot Springs, which is now Truth or Consequences, and he would sell them, and that's how he made money. So he lived up here and grew potatoes. I don't know if he lived up here year-round or for how long. I don't know when he died. I've never seen a picture of him. I don't know much about him, except that he grew potatoes. Most people think that he grew potatoes down here in the meadow, which there's some trees in the way right now. There's also, on the other side of Reed's Peak, there is a ridge called Spud Ridge, so that makes sense. But most people think that it was too rocky up there for him to grow potatoes. So I'm guessing he probably just planted them all over the place and then went and harvested them in the fall. Another story that I read, it was just like a chapter in a book, and it was just like one little story on him. So it wasn't a lot of information. They were just calling him Mr. Reed. He went to Chloride, which is down this way, and he had 4 burro loads of potatoes, and the store owner, he bought them, and he gave him a good price for them. I guess everybody called them good Irish potatoes. And so he was pretty happy about it, and he liked to drink. And so he went over to the bar, and he spent a bunch of money and got really drunk. And then he went back to the store, and I guess there was a potbelly stove in the middle, and there was a chair there, and he fell asleep in the chair with his hat off and his head back. And then there was this kid came in, and his name was Charles Smith, and he had benzene in his pocket. I had to look up what benzene was. It's a like petroleum byproduct that's used in plastics and stuff now, but I guess back in the early 1900s they would use it for like shaving cream and soap and all kinds of stuff. They didn't know that it gave you cancer. So somehow he had a bottle of it in his pocket and he poured it on his head. And the burning woke him up because his head started burning. He kicked the stove over, started a fire and some sawdust in the store, and caused a huge scene. And he got up and he said he was going to kill whoever did that. He didn't know who had done it. And so the kid ran outside, jumped on his horse, and took off. And nobody confessed to who did it, even though he said he would give him $50, which is probably what he got for the potatoes. He was going to give him $50 if he said who it was so he could go kill him. So nobody ever did. He ended up not killing the kid. But that's kind of, I guess, the type of guy he was. I don't know. I don't know if he had a family or what. There's also stories of him loading up his burros full of potatoes, putting a shopping list in with them, and just sending them down to hot springs alone. And so I guess the donkeys, the burros just knew the way, and they would go down there, and the store owner would get the potatoes, and then he would, with the money, he would load them up, and then he would come back. The donkeys would come back. There's also stories of him stashing whiskey along the way, for on the way there and on the way back. So he would just kind of hit all of his little stashes and drink along the way. So it sounds to me like, just guessing, speculating, he lived up here by himself, grew potatoes, and liked to drink a lot. But this is it. He picked a pretty good place. I've talked to a lot of people that have said the biggest buck they ever saw was in Reed's Meadow. But then you ask them when the last time they were here, and it was like 30 or 40 years ago, so I don't know. But I figure this is a good spot to just hang out and sleep. Just watch down here and see if anything comes out. Kind of pooped. It's kind of nice to just sit here. I'm headed out. Got to watch some deer and elk last night and this morning. Climb up over that mountain. It's mostly downhill until right before the truck. So I'm just gonna try to get out as fast as I can. I think it's 18 miles or so. A little further than I wanted to go. That wasn't the dumbest thing I've done in my life, but it's probably in the top 100 for sure. I made it back to the truck. Pretty uneventful, other than just rough trails the whole way. I did use an Onyx tracker thing, and it said I went 17.6 miles today. So 17.6 super rough miles, and I went probably at least another mile yesterday than that. So we're looking at 36, 37 miles I did these 2 days. And this isn't like easy trail miles. This is climbing through cat claw, climbing over and around logs and over rocks, and no trail most of the way. I didn't see any bears on the way out. There were still a ton of bear sign up high. Down lower there's not. I just saw quite a few elk, a couple deer. All in all, it was a good trip. I would say I would recommend it. If you're crazy, do it and let me know. This is pretty rough. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good one. If you went to San Lorenzo Elementary, you probably had Mrs. Pierce as a teacher. So I was talking to Mrs. Pierce. Her name's Jean Pierce, but it doesn't matter if you're 100 years old or 2. She's Mrs. Pierce to everyone. And she was telling me that her mom, Janice Ware, she worked up here at the tower from 1968 till 1977. And so Mrs. Pierce would come in and visit her, and she had a lot of experiences during that time. But the crazy part is her dad, he would work all week. So his name was John. He would work all week, and then on Friday night he would hike in at about midnight, and he'd just bring in he had a little dachshund or a little wiener dog, and they would just hike in at night, and then he would stay the weekend, and then on Sunday night he would hike out at about 9 o'clock and then go to work for the week. And he'd do that every weekend throughout the summer, and it was pretty crazy. Mrs. Pierce shared a bunch of pictures with me, and it was pretty interesting. Everybody kind of has their own little stories about places like Reed's Peak, but that one really stood out to me, and I don't know, it's pretty interesting.